Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're going deep into effective study techniques. You know, the ones that actually work.
It's a jungle out there. So many techniques, so little time.
Well, we've got Sarah here, an expert in all things studying.
I'm happy to be here.
You know, we've all been there, right? Feeling swamped by information, like drinking from that fire hose. Where do we even start?
Okay, so first things first. Before you even crack open a book, think foundation. Your body, your space, they need to be ready to learn.
So like, what, feng shui for my desk?
Well, maybe not that extreme, but yeah. Think about sleep, for example. It's not just about the night before a test, it's the days leading up to it.
You mean no more all-nighters?
Ideally, no way. Consistent good sleep, that's where it's at. That's when your brain's like, okay, let's turn these facts into long-term knowledge.
So those all-nighters, they actually backfire?
Big time. Better to rest up and let your brain do its thing.
Fascinating. And what about, like, where I study? Does that matter?
Totally. Ever notice how some places you're just more focused?
Yeah, some people are all about the library. Others, they need that coffee shop buzz.
Exactly. Switching it up, different locations, that can actually help you remember things better. It's like, ooh, a new place, better pay attention.
Wow, never thought about it like that. But I guess if you find that perfect spot, your steady haven, you stick with it, right? Especially when you're stressed.
Of course. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But a little variety doesn't hurt. Keeps things interesting.
So sleep, environment, check. Anything else? Those little things that can make or break focus.
Music. For some people, that's a game changer.
You mean like classical music, those lo-fi beats everyone's talking about?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Calming. Snow lyrics.
Yeah, lyrics. Total distraction. Speaking of which, the ultimate distraction. Phones.
Ugh, the worst. Digital detox, that's what you need when you're studying. Airplane mode, notifications off, or just like hide the thing.
Oh, I'm so guilty, the phone vortex. Okay, so we've got sleep, environment, distractions down. What about food? Fuel for the brain.
Ditch the sugar rush. Think sustained energy, nuts, apples, edamame, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. Those sugar crashes, brutal. Okay, so we're set, feeling focused, fueled. Now let's get active. Reading and rereading, that's not enough, right?
Nope. Passive reading, it's like watching paint dry. Active studying, that's where the magic happens. Engaging with the material, testing yourself, making connections.
Lay it on me. What are some of those active study techniques?
All right, one of my favorites. Retrieval practice. Trying to recall information without peeking at your notes.
So like flashcards, practice tests, that kind of thing.
You got it. Or there's this cool thing called the Feynman technique.
Feynman technique. Sounds fancy.
It's basically explaining a concept, like you're teaching it to someone who knows nothing. Super simple.
Well, I like that. Simplifying it like forces you to really understand it.
Exactly. And if you can teach it, you know it, you can try teaching a friend, classmate, or even just yourself out loud.
Classic. Become the teacher trick. Works every time. And what about visual learners? Any tips for them?
Visuals are awesome. Color coding.
Oh yeah, love that. Makes notes way more fun to look at.
Right. Another one? Mind mapping.
Heard of that. What is it exactly?
It's like a visual map of information branching out from a central idea. Super helpful for visual learners to see those connections.
Way more engaging than a wall of text, that's for sure. Okay, so we've got active studying down. Any specific strategies for like organizing study time and making it more efficient?
Oh yeah, definitely. Ever heard of the SQ3R method?
SQ3R rings a bell, but refresh my memory.
It stands for survey, question, read, recite, review.
So a step-by-step plan.
Exactly. Let's say you're tackling a textbook chapter. First, you survey it, skim the headings, visuals, get the lay of the land. Then you start asking questions based on those headings and what you already know.
So you're already thinking about it before even reading it.
Yep. Then you read, actively looking for those answers. After each section, try to recite the main points without peeking. And finally, review the whole chapter, quiz yourself on those questions you made earlier.
That's pretty structured. Seems helpful for those who, like, get overwhelmed by tons of information.
It can definitely help. And then there's the PQ4R method, similar idea, but it adds a reflect step after reading to really think about it.
Interesting. Both methods are about being more intentional with reading, not just passively taking it in.
That's the key. Understanding and applying, not just memorizing.
Got it. But how do I remember all this stuff long term? I study, and then poof, it's gone.
The forgetting curve. That's where spaced practice comes in.
Spaced practice. Remind me how that works again.
Basically, you review material at longer and longer intervals. Learn it today, review it tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later, and so on.
So you're like strategically fighting that forgetting curve by reviewing just before you'd forget it. That's clever.
Exactly. And there's this system called the Lightner system, which is a fancy way of doing spaced repetition with flashcards.
Sounds organized.
It is. Now, one last tip before we wrap up this part.
Hit me. Always up for a good study hack.
Did you know a quick workout or brisk walk before studying can really boost your brain power?
Really, get that blood flowing, get those brain cells fired up.
Yep. Another cool trick, study before bed. Gives your brain time to process things while you sleep.
Oh, sleep. Can't escape it. Guess it's true. Rest is productive.
100%. Sleep is like a superpower for your memory.
It really is. I'm starting to see that sleep, it's not just about feeling good. It's about, like, unlocking our full brain potential.
Right. It's amazing how much it impacts everything.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from sleep to environment to active learning. It's a lot to take in. Any key takeaways you'd highlight for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is you got to find what works for you. It's like a personal journey, you know?
I like that. No one-size-fits-all approach to studying, huh?
Nope. Experiment, try different things, see what helps you focus, understand, and remember.
So it's about, like, finding your study groove. What works for one person might not work for another.
Totally. And don't be afraid to change things up as you go. Different courses, different challenges, your study habits can evolve too.
Makes sense. Our study strategies should grow with us. But let's go back to some of the specifics. For someone who's just starting out, wanting to revamp their study habits, where would you recommend they begin?
I'd say, first and foremost, that foundation we talked about. Sleep, getting enough consistently, it's crucial.
All right, sleep. I'm getting the message. But we talked about so much more than just sleep. What about the study environment? Any tips there?
Experiment. Different locations, see what helps you concentrate. You might be surprised what works best for you.
I'm all for trying new things. Mix it up.
But of course, if you have that one spot, your study haven where you're super productive, stick with it,
Right.
Especially when you're under pressure.
So a balance of variety and consistency, kind of.
Exactly. Now, active studying, remember that. It's so much more effective than just passive reading.
Active versus passive, yeah. What are some ways to make our study sessions more active?
Retrieval practice, it's a game changer. Quiz yourself, use flashcards, try that Feynman technique we discussed.
Oh yeah, explaining it like you're teaching it. Simple, but powerful. Are there other ways to engage more actively with the material?
Definitely. Get creative with your notes, color coding, mind mapping, make it visual.
Visuals are definitely helpful. I'm a big fan of color coding myself, makes those notes less intimidating.
Right, and for those who like structure, the SQ3R or KQ4R methods, those are great for really diving deep into textbooks.
Yeah, those seem super thorough, helpful for staying organized and focused.
And then there's space practice, reviewing information at different intervals. It's key for beating that forgetting curve.
Spaced repetition. It's like a brain hack, outsmarting that natural tendency to forget.
Exactly. And don't forget, your physical health matters too. A quick workout or even a brisk walk before studying can help. And of course, enough sleep.
Sleep, exercise, active studying. It's like a whole body approach to learning, isn't it?
It really is. Learning involves your whole self, not just your brain.
I love that perspective. It's not just about cramming information, it's about creating a lifestyle that supports learning. So much more holistic.
Definitely.
We've talked about a lot of techniques and strategies today, but if you had to pick just one key takeaway, what would it be? What's the most important thing to remember about effective studying?
Be an active participant in your own learning. Don't just passively take in information, engage with it, question it, apply it, make it your own.
That's powerful. Taking ownership of our learning journey, not just going through the motions, but really digging in and making those connections.
Absolutely.
So listeners, we've covered a lot of ground today, from sleep to study environment, active learning, spaced repetition, even exercise, a whole toolkit of strategies.
We have.
And I think what really stands out for me is that there's no magic formula. It's about finding what works for you, experimenting, and being open to evolving your approach as you go.
Couldn't agree more.
So as we wrap up this part, I want to leave you with this. Think about your current study habits. What's working? What could be better? And what are you excited to try from what we discussed today?
It's a perfect time to reflect and maybe try something new. Even small changes can make a big difference.
It's all about those little tweaks, right?
Yeah.
Finding what works and making it even better.
Exactly. And don't get discouraged if, something doesn't click right away. It takes time.
Trial and error, that's part of the process, like learning any new skill.
Totally.
Well, we've given you a lot to think about today. Hopefully you've got some new ideas to make your study sessions more, I don't know, fun even.
Yeah, studying shouldn't feel like a chore.
Exactly. It's about embracing the learning process. So tell us, what are you most excited to try? Let us know in the comments.
We want to hear all about it.
And don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the Learn English Lab. We've got more deep dives coming your way.
Until then, happy studying, everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're diving into something I think is super important for all of us, especially if you're here. You know, learning English is a big goal for a lot of our listeners. So we want to talk about staying focused while studying English.
Yeah, that's key.
It's a challenge, you know?
It is a challenge.
For any kind of studying, but especially, you know, picking up a new language.
Exactly.
So where should people even begin if they're really trying to like hone in their focus?
Well, I always think about like building a house.
Okay.
You don't just start building, you have to have a blueprint.
Right.
So that's what goal setting is. It's like the blueprint for learning English.
So you're saying like it's not enough to just be like, yeah, I want to learn English. I want to be fluent.
Exactly. You have to break it down.
Okay.
Like, what do you really want to do with the language? Do you want to like chat with native speakers?
Yeah.
Do you want to read a book without having to look up every other word?
Right.
Do you have like an exam you need to take? Those are the kinds of goals that you really need to focus on.
So I guess like once you've got those goals in mind, that helps keep you motivated too.
Absolutely. Like it gives you a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
But you want to make those goals smart goals.
Okay.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay. So rather than saying, you know, I want to improve my vocabulary, you'd say something like, I want to learn 20 new phrasal verbs.
Yes, this month.
This month.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. I know for me, writing those goals down is really helpful. Do you recommend that for people?
Definitely. Like, don't just keep them in your head. Put them somewhere that you're going to see them every day. Like maybe your bathroom mirror, your computer, a sticky note on the coffee maker.
Yeah.
Because it's that reminder of what you're working towards.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've got our blueprint. We've got our goals set. What's the next step in building our English learning house?
Well, every good house needs a good foundation.
Yeah.
So that would be your study environment.
Yeah, the dreaded distractions.
Yes.
I've been there trying to study with, you know, the TV blaring or my phone buzzing.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for disaster.
You can't expect to learn, you know, grammar rules when you've got a million other things going on around you.
Right.
So finding a quiet space, decluttering your study area,
Right.
and telling your family and friends, do not disturb.
Right. Yeah. I love it. Now, what about people who maybe they can't find that quiet space at home? Any suggestions for them?
Libraries are always a good go-to.
Are we?
Or maybe a cafe with some good Wi-Fi. You know, just a change of scenery sometimes can make a difference.
Yeah, it's like hitting the refresh button.
Exactly.
So we've got our goals, we've got our dedicated study space, we're ready to hit the books, right?
Yes. But it's not just about reading and hoping it sticks.
Okay.
It's about active learning.
Active learning. Tell me more.
So passive learning would be like watching a movie. Active learning is like you're starring in and directing the movie.
Oh, okay.
You're not just a spectator. You're really involved.
So for English learning, what are some examples of active learning?
Taking notes as you read or listen, asking yourself questions about what you're learning, and most importantly, speaking out loud.
Yeah.
Don't just read the vocabulary, say it. Use it in sentences, even record yourself.
So we're turning our brains into these language learning machines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it helps with memory too, because our brains are designed to remember the things that we really engage with.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are your guys' favorite active learning techniques? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear. But even with these techniques, you know, there's always a danger of burnout,
Yes.
right? You can't just study for hours and hours.
Our brains need time to process everything.
To rest.
To rest. So that's where something like the Pomodoro technique can come in handy.
Okay, I've heard of this. Could you refresh my memory?
So basically, you set a timer for 25 minutes of focused study,
Okay.
and then you take a 5-minute break. After 4 Pomodoros, then you take a longer break of like 15 or 20 minutes.
So it's like interval training for your brain. Okay.
Those short bursts of really focused attention, and then time to recharge.
What should people do during their breaks?
Get up, move around, stretch, get away from your computer. I mean, have a snack, listen to some music. Really detach from studying and give your brain a chance to reset. Don't just go on social media.
Yeah, that's not a real break.
No.
Speaking of technology, though, a double-edged sword when it comes to language learning.
Definitely.
We've got all these amazing apps and resources.
Like Duolingo, Babbel, Anki Quizlet.
Yeah.
And then there's all these podcasts and YouTube channels.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
It's like having your own personal language tutor.
Right.
But then there's like the other side,
There's the dark side.
the dark side of technology.
Yeah, social media, news feeds, online games.
I've been there.
Yeah.
1 minute I'm looking up, a grammar rule, and then the next I'm watching like cat videos.
Yes.
It's scary how easily it happens.
If you need help with that, you could always try something like Freedom or the Forest app.
Oh, yeah.
They block those tempting websites and apps.
It's like a digital bodyguard.
Exactly.
So we've talked about setting goals, creating that environment, active learning, and navigating that world of technology.
Yeah.
What else should we keep in mind as English learners to stay focused?
I think the biggest thing is motivation.
Yeah.
Because you can have all the best tips and techniques, but if you're not motivated, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Motivation. That's like the hardest thing to keep going.
Yeah, and it comes and goes.
Yeah.
There are going to be days where you're like, yes, English, I'm ready to go. And then other days where you're just like, ugh, I don't even want to look at my textbook.
So true. So how do we deal with those days? How do we get back on track?
I think one of the best things is tracking your progress.
Oh, okay.
Like keeping a little notebook or something.
Yeah.
And writing down, what you learned that day. Maybe you finally mastered the past perfect tense. Or you learned a new word that's been giving you trouble.
Yeah. I like that. Because it's so easy to get caught up in what we still don't know.
Right.
And forget like how far we've come.
Exactly. So it's like a visual reminder of all those little wins.
And those little wins are important to celebrate.
Yes, definitely. Like reward yourself.
Yeah.
Did you finally have a conversation with a native speaker without freaking out?
Yes.
Go get yourself a coffee.
I love that.
Yeah.
What about study buddies? Do you think that helps with motivation?
It can, for sure. Having someone to share the journey with, to practice with, to complain to when things are tough.
Yeah, it's like a workout buddy for English.
Exactly. It can make a big difference.
So we've been talking about study strategies in general, but what about specifically for English? What are some of the key things our listeners should focus on?
Well, listening and speaking are so essential for really mastering the language.
Right, because that's how you communicate with people.
Exactly. That's how you actually use the language.
There's so many fun ways to practice, like podcasts.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing.
There's so many out there on every topic you can imagine.
It's amazing. And don't worry if you don't understand everything at first.
Yeah, just focus on the main idea.
Pick up some new vocab.
Yeah.
Get used to how English sounds.
Exactly.
Now, what about speaking practice? Because I know a lot of people feel nervous to speak out loud.
The key is to just start.
Yeah.
Like, talk to yourself if you have to narrate your day, practice tongue twisters.
Yeah.
And when you're ready, there's tons of language exchange platforms online.
Well, those are so cool. You get to meet people from all over the world.
Yes, and practice your English.
It's amazing how technology can connect us like that. But speaking of connections, we can't forget about the mind-body connection.
Yes. Your physical health is so important for your mental focus.
So you're saying if you're tired and you're not eating well and you're not exercising,
it's going to be hard to concentrate.
it's going to be hard to learn anything.
Doesn't matter how motivated you are.
The self-care is even more important when you're learning a language.
Yes. Sleep well, eat good food, move your body. Exercise is like magic for your brain.
Yes, like hitting the reset button on your mind and body. And I think it's important to remind our listeners that learning a language takes time.
It does.
There will be ups and downs. There will be frustrations.
Plateaus.
Yes,
all part of the process.
So be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Celebrate those little victories. Focus on the progress you have made, not the mistakes.
Every minute that you spend studying, every word you learn, every conversation you try, it's all bringing you closer to your goals.
It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about progress and perseverance. It really is a journey.
Yeah, a marathon, not a sprint.
And every step you take is progress.
Exactly. Even if it feels small, like you're just learning one new word a day, those words start to add up.
Yeah. And those little moments when you realize like, oh, I understand that, or I can say that.
Those aha moments.
Yeah, those are what keep us going.
They really do. They remind us why we love learning English in the first place.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a question.
Okay.
What's one small thing you can change about your study routine?
Starting today, even.
Yeah, starting today. Like, what's that one little tweak that could make a big difference?
Maybe it's finding that perfect quiet spot.
Right.
or trying out a new active learning technique.
Maybe it's just committing to like 15 minutes a day.
Yeah, even that can make a huge difference over time.
Whatever it is, embrace it and watch those small changes add up.
You'll be surprised how much progress you can make.
And let us know in the comments what your small change is going to be. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your ideas.
And if you found this deep dive helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel.
We have so many more deep dives coming up on all sorts of topics related to language learning and beyond.
A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise today. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, everyone. Happy learning. Keep those English muscles working. Stay focused. And remember, every step you take brings you closer to fluency. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and I am so glad you could join us today for our deep dive into effective note-taking methods for students.
Happy to be here.
We have the fantastic Sarah here with us today to kind of walk us through how to take better notes so we can learn better.
Absolutely.
You know, I got to admit, back when I was a student, my notes were a mess. And I actually one time studied from a friend's notes because mine were so bad and it did not go well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So hopefully we can help our listeners today to take notes.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right into it. Why are good notes so important?
Right. So good notes are important for a few reasons. One, helps you still focus during class.
Oh, yeah.
Two, it helps you actually comprehend the information better. And it's also going to help you remember the information later on when you're studying for that big test.
Yeah, so it's really about learning this stuff and not
Right.
just, like I said, surviving the lecture.
Exactly. And it's also going to help our listeners save time and energy when they're studying because they're not going to have to go back and relearn everything.
Right.
And it's going to help them avoid that feeling of being confused or lost when they're studying.
Okay, so let's say our listener is, going to class, they're ready to take notes. What's the first thing they should do before they even open their notebook?
Before they even open their notebook, they need to do a little pre-class prep work.
Okay, so like what kind of prep are we talking about?
So first, if there are any assigned readings before class, instead of just like skimming them, actually try to like understand the main ideas.
Yeah.
Jot down a few questions that pop up while you're reading. Also make sure to check the syllabus.
Okay.
Because that's going to tell you what topics are coming up, and it can help connect new information with what you've already learned in class.
Gotcha.
And then, like, right before class, glance back at your notes from the previous day.
Okay.
So that's just going to kind of help you make a smooth transition, and it can help the information stick better.
I like it. All right, so we are in class now, pencil poised. What's the golden rule of note-taking?
Okay, golden rule. Do not try to write down every single word the professor says.
Okay.
You really want to focus on getting just the main ideas and the key concepts.
All right, so how do we figure out what's important?
So professors, they often use signal words and phrases that can help you identify what's important, like, they might say something like, the three main reasons are, or the most significant development was.
Oh, yeah.
Or in conclusion.
I love that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are like your clues that this is something important that you need to write down.
Right.
Another thing to watch for is repetition.
Okay.
If the professor keeps saying the same word or the same concept over and over again, it's probably important.
Right. Makes sense.
And then also pay attention to nonverbal cues.
Oh, okay.
Like, the professor's tone of voice, their gestures, if they're pointing at the board.
Yeah.
Those are all clues that this is something important.
That's right.
And then one last tip, as you're taking notes, jot down any questions or thoughts that you have.
Yeah.
Because those can be really valuable later on when you're reviewing.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know there's tons of different note-taking methods out there.
Yeah.
What are some of the most popular ones?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different methods, but some of the most popular ones include the Cornell note system, outlining, mapping, charting, the sentence method, and boxing.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, so let's just go through those really quick.
Okay, let's do it.
So first up, Cornell Notes. This system is really structured, and it's great for any type of lecture.
Okay.
So basically, you divide your page into 3 sections, and you've got a section for your main notes, a cue column for keywords and questions, and then a summary area at the bottom.
It was like a built-in study guide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another popular method is outlining.
Okay.
So this is perfect for lectures that are really well organized and have like a clear hierarchical structure.
Okay.
So you start with the main point at the top, and then you branch out into subpoints, creating this nice visual hierarchy.
Gotcha.
And then there's mapping.
Okay.
This is a visual way of taking notes.
Okay.
So you're basically creating a web of interconnected ideas using diagrams, keywords, arrows, anything that helps you visually represent the relationships between different concepts.
So this would be good for like history or literature, maybe.
Exactly. Those are great examples. Yeah. And then we have charting.
Charting.
So this is really helpful for lectures that are packed with facts and figures.
Okay.
So basically you're organizing information into columns and rows, so it's easy to compare and contrast.
Okay.
And if the lecture is presented chronologically, you can even adapt it into a timeline.
I like it.
And then we have the sentence method.
Sentence method. So this is as straightforward as it sounds. Basically, every new thought or fact gets its own line.
Okay.
So it's not the prettiest, but it's really effective when you're just trying to keep up with a lot of information.
Yeah, I use that a lot.
Yeah. And then lastly, there's boxing.
So this is great for reviewing and organizing your notes after class.
Okay.
Basically, you group related notes together inside boxes, and it creates these visual clusters of information.
I like that. So that'd be good for like after class when you're reviewing everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have all these methods, and I imagine it's a lot for students to kind of digest, and they're like, well, which one do I pick?
Yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming, but the best advice I can give is to experiment.
Okay.
Try different methods, see what works best for you.
Yeah.
You can even combine different methods.
Okay.
The key is to just find what helps you learn and remember the information most effectively.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this debate that's been raging for years. Handwritten notes versus digital notes. Where do you fall on this?
Oh, that is a tough one.
Yeah.
So the research is kind of mixed, but it seems like handwriting might actually be better for learning, especially for conceptual learning.
Interesting. So, like the act of physically writing it down?
Yeah, it seems like it helps us process the information more deeply and remember it better.
Huh.
And handwritten notes also tend to be more focused because you're not as tempted to like multitask or get distracted by notifications.
That is true. My laptop is a distraction machine.
Yeah, and of course with handwritten notes you have more freedom to draw diagrams or mind maps, which can be really helpful.
Yeah, I see.
But digital notes definitely have their advantages too.
Like what?
Well, first of all, they're faster, especially if you're a fast typer.
Yeah.
They're also much easier to edit and organize, and you can search them, which is really helpful.
You can't Command F a notebook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you can easily share your digital notes with other people, and you can store them in the cloud so you don't have to worry about losing them.
Yeah, so it sounds like there are benefits to both.
Right. So it really comes down to personal preference.
Okay.
Some students might prefer handwriting for conceptual subjects,
Uh-huh.
while others might prefer digital notes for classes that are more fact-heavy. Makes sense.
And then there's also the hybrid approach.
What's that?
So you could take your initial notes by hand and then later on transcribe them digitally.
Ooh, I like that.
So you get the benefits of both.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about what happens after the lecture is over. How do we make sure that we're actually using our notes effectively?
So the most important thing is to review your notes as soon as possible after class, ideally within a day or two,
Oh, yeah.
because that's when the information is still fresh in your mind.
Right.
And when you're reviewing your notes, don't just like passively read them over.
Okay.
Actively engage with the material.
So like what kind of stuff can we do?
So you can try like summarizing your notes in your own words, or you can create flashcards or practice questions,
Okay.
or you can even try explaining the concepts to someone else.
So really interact with it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And as you're reviewing, if there are any parts that you don't understand, don't be afraid to reach out for help.
You can talk to your professor, you can go to office hours,
Yeah.
you can ask a friend for help, you can consult your textbook.
Have those resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then once you feel like you have a good understanding of the material, you can start organizing your notes in a way that makes sense for you.
Okay.
So you could try like color coding them or highlighting key terms or creating mind maps.
Right. Right.
Key is to just make them your own.
Awesome. All right. Well, Sarah, this has been great. We covered a lot of information today from, why note-taking is important, pre-class prep, to all these different methods and how to review notes.
Yeah, definitely a lot.
So what are some of the key takeaways that you want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that there's no one right way to take notes.
Okay.
The best method is the one that works best for you.
Right.
So experiment, try different things, and find what helps you learn and remember the information most effectively.
Awesome.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
That's great advice, Sarah. Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's all about finding what works for you and kind of personalizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and making those notes your own.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners? Any other kind of note-taking wisdom?
Just remember that your notes are for you, so they don't have to be perfect.
All right.
Don't worry about making them look pretty or capturing every single detail. Just focus on what's going to help you learn and remember the information.
I like that. Okay, so as we kind of close out this episode, do you have a question that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I would like our listeners to think about this. What's one small change that you can make to your note-taking process today based on what we talked about?
I like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big change.
Right.
Just one little thing that you think could make a difference.
Yeah, I love that challenge.
Ah,
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about note-taking.
it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And all of our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to the Learn English Lab. If you like this episode, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. We'll see you next time.
And speaking of resources for learning, we have a ton here at the Learn English Lab.
We do.
Our website is full of, articles and videos and all sorts of tips
It is.
on everything from grammar and vocabulary
Yeah.
to pronunciation and conversation skills. So it's a really great resource for our listener.
It is. And also, don't forget about community.
Oh, yeah.
Learning is always more fun when you're doing it with other people.
It is, yeah.
So, find a study group, join some online forums,
Yeah.
chat with other English enthusiasts.
Right.
It can make a big difference.
I agree. And the Learn English Lab is all about community. We want to create a supportive and inspiring environment
Right.
where learners can, connect and collaborate and really thrive.
Exactly.
Whether you're just starting out or you're more advanced.
We're here to help.
Yeah. And, I think passion is so important when you're learning a language.
Absolutely.
When you're genuinely excited about learning English, it becomes so much more fun.
It does, yeah.
So embrace your curiosity. Explore the language. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Love it.
It's all part of the process.
That's right. That's right. I love that. And on that note, Sarah, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of the Learn English Lab.
Okay.
We want to thank you, our amazing listeners, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you found this deep dive into note-taking useful and insightful. And if you did, make sure to hit that like button, share this episode with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. We'll see you next time. Happy learning.